Hi everyone and welcome back to the shack and to Christmas, I want to say 1993, where one of these was left under the tree for me on Christmas morning by good old Mr. Santa. It wasn't my first game console, but for a good few years it was the one I loved the most. This year I've got my hands on this rather untidy example, so let's rekindle some memories. I'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsor for the channel, PCBWay. For retro computing enthusiasts like us, they offer everything we need to keep our old machines going and build cool new stuff too. From PCB design to fabrication, CNC machining and 3D printing through to turnkey solutions, they're fast, affordable and provide amazing quality. And at a starting price of only $5 for PCBs, an assembly from only $29, it's friendly on the wallet too. They're our official sponsor, keeping our soldering irons hot and our tea towels fancy. Now, on with the show. So a quick visual inspection of this tells me I definitely don't want to plug in a cartridge. I can see corrosion on the cartridge slot that will have to be dealt with. But first let's see what else came in this little bundle of yuck. Well, we got a yucky power supply with a UK plug, a yucky official SEGA controller, and a yucky aftermarket snapper controller. I bought this not yucky because it's brand new RGB SCART cable because it didn't come with one, and this also not yucky brand new multi-game cartridge of questionable morals. Let's flip it over and have a look at its bottom. Alright, settle down you lot. Okay, so we can see that this is a UK machine because firstly, it's a Mega Drive, not a Genesis as they were known in the US, and secondly, because it's a PAL-I, which was only used in the UK, Ireland, Hong Kong, South Africa and Macau. And we all knew where that was, right? The bottom of the machine is what we in the retro community call well used, but posh people would probably call it a patina. Opening the expansion slot, we see the red edge connector protector, and taking that off shows it's taken its job seriously as the connector looks in good condition, which is more than can be said for the rest of the machine. So let's open the old girl up and take a look on the inside. Hard to believe, but I've never opened one of these up, and it seems like there are screws in each corner and what feels like a screw under this label too. Now, I don't want to just go ripping into this and suffer the wrath of the internet, so I'll get Mrs. Retro Shack's hairdryer, she won't mind, and give the sticker a blast of the good stuff. And then gently peel that label off, revealing not a screw at all, nothing in fact. Grrr. So popping that sticker back on while it's still warm, we'll then take out all the screws on the back. With those out, we'll remove the expansion port cover and the edge protector, and then starting at the back of the case, we'll separate the top and bottom parts. The two parts are joined together with this power LED cable, so I'm going to put a header there to allow for easier disconnection. And yes, I also should have looked this up first, because if I had have done, I'd have learnt that most people disconnect from the LED end. I never said I was clever. Skillfully, carefully and wisely cutting that cable reveals a typical 80s and 90s RF shield, put there so that turning on the machine didn't result in the entire street's evening of blankety blank being rendered unwatchable. Well, that's what they'd have you believe. We don't really need those RF shields these days, so they tend to get discarded. I won't though, because I'm nice. Now we're inside, we can see that damage to the cartridge slot more clearly, and there appears to be some corrosion on the board itself as well. In fact, there are small signs of corrosion all over the RF shield too, so I'm just hoping it's not a real disaster once this cover comes off. Now there are quite a few screws holding this RF shield on, so let's resort to magic. Now with that RF shield out of the way, things aren't actually looking too bad in here. There's no real visible corrosion other than that around the cartridge slot, and in fact I'm quietly confident that this should be up and running soon. I'm loving the fact that all the capacitors seem tired and are having a little lie down, bless them. So let's get this out of the case fully so we can have a look at the bottom of the main board too. So now we're down to our main board and this little board that holds the power input. Flipping the board over reveals a nice clean PCB with no signs of water or heat damage, which is very good news for us. Here's that area of corrosion on the cartridge slot, and to the right of it near these capacitors. The best thing to do with the cartridge slot is to replace it, so I got a new one off of Tinternet, which came pretty quickly and seems to be the right size and shape, so that should sort that. First of all though, let's clean up this bit of yuck and see if there's any damage to the tracks underneath. We'll use good old fashioned 99.9% pure isopropyl alcohol for our cleaning solution and an old toothbrush as our delivery mechanism, with elbow grease for lubrication. Some rigorous scrubbing later and we can see that although the corrosion did eat into the trace, it chose nice chunky ones and hasn't completely broken continuity. We may just have stopped this in time to avoid having to put in a bridge or other repair. Having had a good look over the rest of the board and finding nothing else concerning other than this little self-inflicted faux pas down here, we'll get on with changing that cartridge port. In my experience, getting any port like this out can be a bit of a nightmare. They're designed to take the strain of being yanked about by people jamming in and ripping out cartridges thousands of times over, so they typically have larger contact pads and loads of solder on loads of pins. Lots of flux is going to be needed here, so we'll be quite liberal with it. Soldering iron set to 400 degrees centigrade, let's whip along with our good old fashioned solder sucker. It's important to allow enough time on each joint for the solder to melt before fully popping that sucker. There, that's most of the solder removed, but there's still enough to be holding this thing firmly in place. Time for the hot air gun and some wiggling. With the hot air gun also set at 400 degrees centigrade and the part under tension with the help of some metal tweezers, it's time to try and uniformly heat all of the pins to solder melting temperature at the same time, which takes a bit of practice, and of course we have to be careful not to linger on one particular spot for too long and risk burning the board or melting something we don't want to. This is especially important when working on the component side of the board or around plastic parts. After what seems like an age, you do have to be quite patient with this. The old cartridge port is out, and after a bit of a scrub and some tidying up, we have a nice clean PCB ready for the new part. And here it is, just pop that in. Lovely, fits like a glove, so let's get it soldered in. You'll know by now, if you've been watching the channel for a while, that I like to solder the two most opposite pins of any part, presuming it has more than two pins of course, because then I can check if the part is level to the board, and if not, I can apply a bit of heat and pressure to either end to get it to sit nice and flush. I'll do this even if I've taped the part to the board just to ensure a nice snug fit. Once I'm happy with the fit, I'll do the other corners, make sure I'm still all good, and then just whip along and solder each pin with a good amount of the silver stuff to make a strong connection. The end result should give us strong, shiny and uniform solder joints across all of the pins. Okay, before we actually switch this thing on, let's just make sure that the power supply is giving out the correct voltage and that we don't see any undue fluctuations in the reading. Well, that's interesting. We're seeing a minus 12 volt reading with a positive sensor on the inside of the power pin, meaning that this power supply is center negative. Switching the sensors confirms this and a still steady 12 volt supply. Nice. If you pick up a SEGA Mega Drive and it doesn't come with a power supply, make sure you get a center negative one to avoid any risky oopsies. So now we know the board is receiving the correct voltage, we'll make sure that the voltage regulators are doing their job and that the chips are receiving the correct 5 volt supply. Well, that looks good to me too. Okay, I'm happy with that. A working machine, and it seems the cartridge of questionable morals is working too. Let's select a game and see what happens. Well, that's interesting and of course to be expected. This is a PAL machine, and like most consoles back in the day, it's region locked to only play games for that territory. Let's load a PAL title and see if we have any more luck. Well, that seems to be working just fine. Now, Sega were quite sensible in their manufacturing, and it seems that you can fiddle with these jumpers on the board, fitting switches to allow you to select between PAL and NTSC TV formats and Japanese, European and American territories. But I've learned my lesson and done a bit of research to find that there are many different modifications that can be done to these machines. I've ordered a switchless region mod which will fit in the next Mega Drive video, and we'll also see what we can do about the tatty case. In the meantime, I'm going to play some PAL games and ask you lot for some help. What mods are good for these machines? Drop me a note in the comments if you can point me in the right direction. There just seems to be so many different options, but there must be a sweet spot, so let me know. A very happy new year to all of you out there in Retroland. We've got a great 2026 lined up for the channel, lots of exciting videos, and now that the studio is almost finished, much more often too. Did you have a Mega Drive? Should I feature more consoles on the channel? If so, what would you like to see me delve into? Repairs, documentaries, let me know and I'll see what I can do. I'm off to play Sonic. See you next time in the shack.